Hey everybody, welcome back to Your Desk University, bringing you live learning with AEC tech experts directly to your desk. Wow, it's been a really kind of weird season in the world these last few weeks, and we're really glad to be a part of this, bringing this training together. In the last week, we've added 3 more sessions, and they're going to be Dynamo, data tree structures with Andrew Human, and Rhino inside. So make sure you add those to your schedule. We plan on streaming till about June, middle of second week of June. We do have a guest host, but you can see they're not next to me today, and that's because we have a special treat coming up. Next week, tune in for Dynamo packages with Carl Storms. He's going to go through some of the packages that exist, some of the new packages that have been out there, and really ones that you want to add to your Dynamo. And make sure you tune in for that. And now I want to introduce the guys behind the curtain. So first, I'd like to add John. John Skippers has been part of the streaming every single show. He does audio testing with us and manages our YouTube, and he's been making all the posts. So huge thanks to John for that. And I'm going to ask John if you could just say like one thing of why you decided to get connected with Your Desk University.
Well, I think that if there was a time to do it, this is the time. And it's been so much fun, and it's some kind of feeling of normalcy, I suppose. Plus, I think Timon was very, very convincing.
Next, I want to introduce Jared. Jared is one of my coworkers at Walter P. Moore, and when we first started thinking about this idea, we bounced a lot of ideas off of it together. He's helped bring together a lot of the speakers, and then has supported some of the website development. So, Jared, can you tell us like a little bit about why you decided to be a part of Your Desk University?
Similar to John, obviously, felt like a good time to be kind of giving back to the community and providing people with some learning opportunities, and also somewhat selfishly for me to learn some things as well. And yeah, I also, I think it was also about getting a group of people who are really like kind of the boots on the ground at their respective offices, and who you don't always get to hear from. We definitely had some speakers who have been like people that you would often hear at a conference or something, and that's great. But we've also kind of mixed in some people who you don't always hear from at these kind of larger conferences. So I think it's been a nice opportunity to get like a pretty diverse group together.
Yeah. And on that note, if you are interested, we are going to be doing a second series after a month or 2 months break. But if you're interested in participating in that, go to our website. I think there's a link at the very bottom for joining us as a speaker. We're looking for really engaging speakers to join, and we're looking to bring another really solid series. Jared's actually going to host tonight, so I'll let him introduce our speaker in a minute. But the fourth person, who also happens to be our speaker tonight, Libo Lee. I'm really grateful to have his help. I actually didn't know Libo before this series, but Jared and Libo go back a little bit together. Has done most of the work on our website alongside with Jared. So Libo, thanks so much. Huge thanks for that. It's definitely not a skill set I have. It's great to have you on the team. And could you tell us like one thing about Your Desk University and why you decided to be a part of this initiative?
I think like Jerry said, like when he first told me about it, it sounded really fun. It's all about kind of like hearing from all kinds of different people who have different perspectives on kind of the same industry, the same software, the same kind of systems that we're using. And I really learned a lot so far, kind of listening to everyone who's presented.
Yeah, there's really been a kind of a crazy variety of different speakers coming from different positions. All right, well with that, we're gonna stop this intro, and Jared, go ahead and take it away with Libo. And thanks so much for the presentation.
Thanks, guys. All right, so today, as we already kind of met him, I'm joined by Libo Lee. Libo is currently a software engineer at AEC Lab, and they're a newly formed BIM consultancy focused on strategy, implementation, and software, which is also backed by AEC resources team over in Argentina, who's been around for a couple decades now. Libo is also a former colleague of mine at WeWork, and he's always been a great person to bounce ideas off of and think about crazy workflows. And so today, so what his talk is going to be data-driven design, burn your documents. So he's going to discuss how people in the AEC industry can leverage data to kind of go beyond the typical delivery methods and processes and streamline their workflows. And so it's very much in the spirit of a lot of the talks that we've had. For everyone watching, please feel free to, I'll be kind of feeding Libo the questions from the chat. I already see there's some familiar names over there in the chat, which is great. So yeah, I'll hand it off to Libo and take it away.
Everyone watching this kind of series of talks is definitely interested in technology and improving kind of their workflows and learn new things. But I really want them to kind of get off their feet and start doing it. And hopefully my what's been called a controversial topic will kind of move everyone in that direction. Kind of what I want to go through is that, one, I don't think CAD has really changed the way that we've approached drawing and construction. Overall, we're really creating digital analogs of paper-based processes. We're really expecting software to solve this for us, but at the end of the day, changing the way we communicate is a human problem, and it's our responsibility to change the way we approach it. And to me, data is an essential long-term skill, and honestly, it's not that easy to get started, but it's amazing, trust me. Design is all about kind of either describing current conditions or future possible states. And the way that we've done it through millennia has been kind of drawings of symbols, right? Like for 3,000 years, been kind of doing the same things, just with a little bit more sophistication, a little bit more complexity. We deal with this shit every day. Like everyone from different industries are all throwing these drawings around. Hopefully the other person can interpret the documents the same way that you do. And if they can, you get a result. You get something that's built, you send them a piece of paper, they can build, a boiler room, an office, an ice bath, something like that. And we've gotten really good at it, right? Like it used to be a bunch of dudes in a room copying a drawing, but now, you hit print, you get 100 copies, you send it off to wherever. But at the end of the day, it's the same, right? Like we're turning buildings into these documents that represent what we think a building should be. And our workflows are full of these things, right? Like each time we start with a problem, we gather a bunch of documents that are necessary for us to consider the problem. We load it all into our heads. And then now, because we have BIM modeling, we start loading that all into a model. And after that, you're still shoving it back into a file, exporting stuff back into Excel, exporting stuff back into PDF. And really, there seems to be no end. This is kind of, what a daily workflow sort of looks like for most people. And I think we really have to look at what these documents do for us and why we're so reliant and so adamant about still using these things. They almost tell us nothing about what's inside them. We come up with all these crazy naming conventions just so we have some way of, half figuring out what the possible content inside a file is. And, honestly, people don't agree, right? Like shit happens all the time where you draw something somewhere and someone's like, what the hell is that? I'm going to do something that I think that is. And changes are really hard to synchronize. You get red lines, someone standing behind you trying to adjust the model, right? There's many copies of things everywhere. It's hard to kind of make sure that you're doing it correctly and checking that your changes are being made on kind of what's the most current. And at the end of the day, it's a really, really hard task to load up all of these documents, put it in your head, and then try to do something with all the knowledge that you now have to hold. And the best way that we've come up with to organize documents is a paper analog. We're basically building a digital version of these filing cabinet rooms where it wasn't that easy to put information together before, and it's really not that easy now. And we're losing a lot of time, right? Like I think a lot of people are spending way more time than they want to look for the information that they need in order to just get something done. And I think if you're an email chain, trying to figure out how to do something that someone told you to do, this chart looks like. And some technology has started changing that. Dynamo is an exciting way to connect information to documentation. BIM 360, right, really was looking to take that next step. Centralized models, kind of collaborative design, everybody working towards the same data structure. And when you go into it, really what you see is, again, we're repeating sort of the same scheme, building these paper-based processes into these digital systems. Part of what's causing that, I think, is that documents really rely on people for translation, and a lot of people just don't want to use the software. They use what they know, and they tell someone else who knows how to use the software to change the parameters or the data or the configurations that they need. These are all actual things that I've been asked in the past. you know, a lot of companies that we talk to, this is kind of what they say is like, look, it's too much of a mess. We don't have time. We don't have people to deal with it. We're just going to use CAD. Our guy's just going to hand draw his watercolors. We're just going to go with it. And, you know, there's honestly not that much improvement, right? Like if I just do it in my company, as soon as I hand the PDF off to the next person, I have no control over how fast he gets his work done. So the efficiency that you recognize is really only there for your own operations. And really, it's just about communicating design intent, right? If documents can do it, why bother learning something new? They're all assemblies of the same sort of representation. You can communicate the same amount of information, whether through documents or through a data system. But one thing documents will never do for you is they'll never fit the shape of your business. They'll never fit the shape of your design operation. Documents will never fit how you want to design like a glove. It will never be designed around how you design. And documents really are people working on different things. You know, people in your office are all working on different documents. They feel like they're not working on the same thing because they're not actually. Everyone's working on a static variation of what they think is the overall project. And even if people don't have the best access to information, even if they're not skilled at it, if they're accessing it from the same source, from the same pool, they're at least all looking at the same thing. And really, it's a people problem. If everybody sort of between these documents elevates their skill a little bit, looks at what they're doing and see what's a data-oriented approach for them to go from point A to point B, we can start making a lot of these connections instead of these handoffs. But it's hard, right? Like at work, we're sitting like this, everything's on fire. And at home, there's a ton of shit to do. We can't be sitting here trying to bang tables together. But like drawing, data is a skill. It's something that you can practice a little at a time. And eventually, through kind of working at it, you'll hit these milestones where you'll realize a lot of gains from these new skills that you've learned. And there's a lot of really awesome tools out there. Even with sort of most basic knowledge, you can access a variety of these cloud-based hosting platforms, these powerful database solutions, things like Airtable, and you just build your app on top of it. It doesn't matter how shitty it is, right? Like you're still accessing information in a new, novel way that's much more sustainable than reading a PDF. And I think they're really worth it. A lot of the tools are there. They're really well documented. People want you to use it, and it's free. Like it's free things that people are advertising you and for you to use. Data will tell you about its contents. There's a myriad of ways to make data tell you something about how it's structured, what's in it, how things are kind of partitioned in it. And unlike documents, you can customize the way that you analyze sort of these different data sets. There's all kinds of tools. You can pick and choose your own, whatever fits your workflow. You can experiment and pick something that's better. And data's here to stay. Everybody's working with it, and the tools are only getting better and better. The people who work with copious amounts of data are doing things that, that make large Revit models and large Navisworks clashes look like child's play. And our documents are already generated from data. If we go to the source, learn to manipulate, generate, and transform the source, we can always turn it back into a document. So some examples. Airtable is a great way to get started with designing data. It's a relational database that is very user-friendly. You can kind of use it like Excel, but it has all these great features. What we're connecting it with is Google Apps Scripts. I think you heard from a previous presenter who walked you through a lot of really cool stuff that he was able to do with this. It connects to Airtable very easily, and the result is a small web app that could be built on top of a very simple infrastructure that takes all the documentation that would have necessarily been between this process, emails, kind of PDFs, Excel sheets of kind of floor data. It all goes away. It's one simple thing that directly fits the process that you customize because you do the job yourself. Same thing, right? Like we all lay stuff out on a floor plate. We can use things like a document with some formulas. We access and transform it in a way that allows us to interface with the data. And now we have a way to translate design standards into something that's directly applicable, right? Like you're laying desks out in a floor plan, but all the knowledge and all the information, you're not comparing it with documents. It's just there, it's accessible for you, and you get to evaluate the result and make design decisions, not sort of document searches. Again, same sort of workflow. You tie a programmatically accessible data source, in this case, Firestore, and then the data interface here is Slack. But what we built out of it is this thing we call Hotline BIM. It was a way to consolidate all the BIM questions people were throwing at us in a way that we can throw back at them in the same medium. If you ask a question in Slack, Hotline BIM will pick it up, search its database, and respond back with the top 5 answers. And really, like drawing, data really helps you express the design and the design intent that you have. So here again, we have Firebase and Firebase hosting, a little bit of PyRevit, and we can build a whole web platform that communicates design in the way that we want it, through versions, through time, through the metrics that we care about, and through the efficiencies that we care about. And people are already trying to restrict us through these kind of data standards, right? Like, I think we should be responsible as designers, as people who are actually doing the work, to put together the structures and the best practice in place that we believe works. So if we kind of learn a little bit about data, I think we'll enter that world and we'll be much more, we have much more agency in deciding where the technology goes with our industry. And we're learning software all the time. I think anybody watching this, they've all learned software in their life and they've all mastered it in a very short amount of time. And after taking some effort, your life with documents will become way easier. Like there's docx parsers, there's Excel parsers, there's PDF generators. All of these things become wide open to you once you get past the initial cliff of learning to manage the underlying data. And together, once we all scale up on this, we can all communicate differently. We no longer have to rely on these archaic forms of communication, and we can establish better standards. This is what AEC Lab looks like. And these are some great things to try if you're interested in tackling sort of some data problems. They kind of span the gamut in kind of what's doable, I guess, with them. But Airtable, definitely recommended. Airtable drives the Your Desk University website. Airtable drove, I don't know, probably 80% of WeWork's data infrastructure. So it's a very powerful tool. It's very accessible. It's really good to dive into kind of design of relational data. Google Apps Scripts, if you're already using G Suite, there's no excuse not to use it. It makes it super powerful. Connect your sheets to docs, your docs to slides, your slides to whatever, back to Airtable, you can do it all. SQLite, if you're getting into sort of SQL databases, I really recommend SQLite. It's local, it's very easy to set up. If you don't have knowledge about all the other things around setting up a server and things like that, SQLite's a great solution. Observable, it is the sort of JavaScript version of a Jupyter notebook. Jupyter notebooks is a very good entry point into Python coding. And Observable kind of does the same thing for JavaScript. It's web-based. You don't have to install anything on your computer. It's very easy to just dive in and copy off of someone's example. Postman, for web API requests, you can hit it against Airtable to practice a lot of these kind of communication methods. dbeaver is a free database kind of management tool. You can connect it to SQLite. You can connect this sort of existing business databases that you have. Notion, if anyone's sort of used Atlassian or I guess Wikipedia, Notion is sort of like that. It takes a very node and connections approach to document management. And I think once you get to use Notion, once you sort of put more information into it and start organizing, you'll get a lot of what I'm talking about in terms of how documents are really just manipulating the underlying data. And if you master the data, the documents become much easier. Tableau Public is a great way to explore data. It's free. Tableau has a lot of powerful tools that help you to just dump a data set in and get cracking with understanding what's in it, things like that.
Hey,
And that's it.
but while we're go back to that last slide real quick, we did have one question, which I'll kind of like, well, maybe make it a little bit broader than the way it was worded, but like, do you have tips for like how people, like how do you know like what the best tool, when you were exploring these tools, like what are some tips you have for people for like knowing what tool to use and like where to find out about like, which one, if they wanted to, do a first step into building a database, like how would they know which one to use?
Google's great. Definitely use Google. It's taught me basically all I know about coding. Like I started from an architecture background. And Jared knows I'm like kind of a platform junkie, so I try everything. And I think that's really the best way to do it. Like build a small project, download something, give it a try. That's really how you know it fits you. And I think that's kind of what I'm trying to deliver with this talk as well, is like you really have to find the approach that fits you. Me telling you what my approach is won't really fit your workflow, your daily tasks, and how your data looks and how you need to structure it.
Cool. A couple other questions here. This kind of ties into some of the previous chats, but where do you usually keep your documentation about your documentation? GitHub, read the docs, wikis, etc.
So Carlo, a mutual friend of me and Jared's, actually recently turned me on to Rome Research. It's kind of a really bare bones note-taking software, but what it does really well is link pieces of knowledge together. So anywhere in the document, you can just create a quick tag, and it will allow you to link things to other things very easily.
Another question. Everything is moving towards the web, including AEC design. Is there anything you think is holding back faster web technology and web tool adoption by the AEC industry?
People, learn it, guys. It's not that hard. Once you guys start doing all the web stuff, I think the AEC industry is going to look completely different.
Yeah, I think we're already seeing a lot of people starting to pick up little things here and there. And I think, like you were saying, and like the chat we did last week, like Airtable and Google Apps Scripts seems like is like a really good starting point for people who aren't coming from like a computer science or software background.
And Zapier, like
Yeah.
I guess I'll show the demo.
Oh yeah, a little demo here.
So I'm super rusty at Dynamo, but Jared insisted, so you can blame him for all the ugly wiring.
I didn't insist on Dynamo. I insisted on a demo.
Then I must have heard you wrong. But so this is kind of an Airtable Dynamo connection. I don't know how many of you have looked in the back of Airtable, but it has really nice API documentation that is dynamic to how you adjust your data structure in Airtable. So if I add, I don't know, a field here saying Jared approved, checkbox, right? Like, and when we refresh this, the projects table will have like an additional record that says Jared approved. Additionally, we can call it, I tried to make a post in Dynamo, it didn't work. But I really like the periodic update feature. It's pretty fun. But this is the same Dynamo script in both Civil 3D. So this is a Civil 3D example file that I've opened. And then this is a completely different Revit file that I've opened. But the underlying script is the same. So we are doing a search by project name. So let's add a new project, your desk, add some stuff right here. And then if we go to capitalize, here, your desk, right? It should update to all the information that we just inputted. We do the same thing here. It should also update to all the information we just inputted, right? And then as we change information here, it's the best. Everything should update. No, I think it's the exclamation mark that threw it off. No? Ah, yes, live demos always break. Oh, it's because I'm looking for the project name. I'm stupid. Sorry, guys. That's that. We need to change a different property. Not delete everything. And it should be slowly publishing. There it is. It's there, and then it's there. And because it's an Airtable, what you can also do is hook it up to Zapier. I did this a little bit earlier today. It takes a new record trigger, and then it sends a message in Discord. For those of you who haven't used Discord before, it's very much like Slack. You can use a function called webhooks to send any request in, but it's integrated with a lot of different things like Zapier. So you could just use a lot of out-of-box tools to connect these different things. So what I've done in Airtable is create a trigger based on a new record event, and then customize the channel message to send to a specific channel based on some of the information that is in Airtable. So here, come in, fill out your desk project, Jared, location, submit, and then I think, hopefully, if we run this, run, did you guys hear that? Or
I heard a slight thing on my end. I don't know if everyone heard it.
But Discord has text to voice, so you can enable that feature as well. So if there's something kind of passive in the background that you're trying to set up alerts for, you can do that through Discord, and then everyone who wants to subscribe to that kind of audio alert just has to be on that channel and set it in the background. So there's a lot of like these different things you can just connect in order to produce the workflows that fit kind of the tools they're using and the processes that you're engaged in.
Right. Do you want to maybe just talk real quick what Zapier is for people who don't know? It's not everyone in AEC uses that, I'm guessing.
Zapier, I guess what would you call it? Like a like a thing connector?
Kitchen sink of like connecting everything.
So yeah, basically it's like you start with an app and then you run it through a series of steps and you connect it to another app. So anything that you're doing, like calendar to, I don't know, let's see, calendar to sheets, let's say. I want to something to happen whenever there's a new event and I want to create a new spreadsheet. It will template it for you. You just sign into your accounts, and then you can sort of use this automation to say, I don't know, maybe it's like every time you have a meeting, you want to create a copy of a spreadsheet that is a meeting template that has all your meeting notes. That was just automated. You don't have to go in and copy your Excel spreadsheet into a new OneDrive folder, put the date on the folder name. You guys know the drill.
Right. All right. So we have a bunch of questions here, actually. Probably won't be able to get to all of them, but we'll try to pick and choose a few. I guess one that's it's sort of a few questions wrapped into one. What's your experience with SQL databases versus non-SQL databases? Do you think there's a way to go? And then sort of a follow-up, I guess, is how do you manage scalable projects when design options are constantly evolving?
Amazing question. Definitely something that I think we're all still grappling with. There's not really kind of a template solution. Between the SQL and NoSQL thing, I think there's a place for both. I think if you dig into building a lot of these software, you'll encounter situations where you'll want to use one or the other. And once you kind of start building those projects, it'll become really clear to you why those databases are designed the way they are and how they are sort of better fit for the way that you are utilizing the data. And in terms of projects and optionality, that's something that we dealt with so much at WeWork. It's a very complex problem. And I think that problem is part of what set me on this path. What we sort of realized is that the softwares that are being built out there really isn't managing spatial data and building information the way that we're thinking about it and the way that we're designing about it. And I think unless we enter kind of the field and start building some of this stuff ourselves, we won't really be able to see a future where things like optionality, kind of time phasing, and things like that are very clearly structured in a software system.
Cool. Another question, any opinion of using client-side internal versus vendor remote databases for managing company and project data, pros and cons of either?
Do both. Do both. Just there are situations for both. I think your central data environment, what kind of in my slide is a central database, is different from each specific small database that you're using. I think there is sort of a task-focused database that you build oriented towards the use case, but then they should all report to a larger central database that's much more for kind of company-wide data management and analysis and things like that. I think if you look at a lot of like YouTube videos on how a lot of tech companies manage their data infrastructure, there's a lot of really good stuff there.
Does everyone at your desk grow plants? I think the answer is yes, obviously. Let's see, what other questions are we getting? Have you looked at graph databases such as Neo4j?
Yes. I don't know how to use them very well, honestly, so I can't really give a good recommendation on them, but they're very interesting for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the things that you kind of want to build with graph databases, you might be able to do with NoSQL databases as well. So if you can do it with NoSQL, it's much better supported and much easier.
Mm-hmm. I guess maybe like kind of broaden the conversation a little bit. Like I know like we work together at WeWork, which is a vertically integrated company, and there's kind of like a lot of similar companies out there, whether it's in co-working or in other areas. And now you're kind of like on the outside, in a similar position where we're more in like as a consultant role. How do you see like when you're I think within like a vertically integrated company, it was a lot clearer in terms of the value, in terms of how like setting up a database, because it would be able to talk to so many different departments. How do you sell that to more of like an architect or an engineering firm that's kind of maybe a little bit more sectioned off? And how do you think that, as a follow-up to that would be like, how can they leverage that, like a knowledge of data to maybe expand their role in the industry?
Yeah, definitely. Very, very hard question. I think us being in that vertically integrated environment really helped us see a lot of these problems that we're facing right now, a lot of the things that I think people who are presenting at your desk are discussing. In terms of being in industry, I think one of the things is, I probably didn't coin this, but like the silo of experts problem is like everyone's handing out documents in between these silo of experts, and until these companies, these silo of experts, really bring up their own process in a data-oriented way, I don't think we'll be able to see those connections, because really the next company that doesn't use a data system, you have to convert all your data back into documents for you to communicate design downstream. So really, it has to be kind of everyone elevating their game at the same time.
Probably have like another 5 minutes if there's any other questions out there. Otherwise, there's a lot of, is this a question? There's a lot of conversation on HyPar's Discord on modeling built environments as a node and link topology. It's not really a question. Yeah, I guess there are a lot of interesting tools out there now that are coming up. I guess like HyPar is kind of like a big one, and we're going to hear from Andrew Human, and we've heard from Ian Keogh previously about that. And I think there's like Speckle's been around for a while. Have you like poked into like any of these more third-party kind of like add-on, or like not third-party, but like a platform agnostic kind of connector, kind of like Zapier for building industry, I guess, in a way. Have you guys looked into any of these and how you can kind of use that to help a client?
Yeah, I mean, it's very exciting technology, right? Connecting between all these different design software in a very platform agnostic way. What we've found is that even kind of us going into it, the technical barrier is very high to adopt some of this, and your firm already has to be at a very high technical level in order for you to sort of fully realize the value of adopting kind of those additional systems. And to me, if you kind of build in your innate skills to manage data within your firm, those kind of connectors become somewhat less necessary. Like if you're using Google Apps Scripts, you probably don't need to use Zapier.
Cool. What I guess like another more broader question, since you know, like I know like a little bit of Python, JavaScript, maybe some C Sharp. Like which languages that you've kind of learned over the years have been most helpful in terms of like utilizing data the way that you're talking about here?
I think JavaScript. JavaScript runs everywhere. It's not hard to set up. It runs in your browser. It runs on Google. A lot of these platforms will have a JavaScript block that you can just add in. Like I built a group texting thing that texted the WeWork executive board real estate summaries every morning, and that was just done through a function block in Twilio. So it was just run on platform. I didn't have to really deploy anything. It was just maybe like 50 lines. So JavaScript is really adaptable to all kinds of different situations.
We do have another question in here, kind of related back to what you're talking about, kind of like elevating everyone. What do you think the breaking point will be when clients begin demanding that technical elevation, in terms of examples of documents of records that are in databases?
I think the clients that know what they're doing are already demanding it now. Like I think WeWork was one of those clients. Like we demanded a very high level of kind of data fidelity from what we were building, and I think a lot of the performance-based kind of owners are going to start looking at their spatial metrics very carefully.
Yeah, I think we spoke about it a little bit in the talk that I had a month or so ago with like Chantal and Mari, and we were kind of more on the developer side, and like Equinox, I think, is a good example of like where the client was kind of demanding data rather than just drawings. And in that case, it was also heavily being used for operations on the operation side of things. So I think that would be like a good example as well. So just to kind of give a non-co-working example. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, I guess we'll wrap it up. And if people do have further questions, feel free to go to the Slack, the Slack for Your Desk University, and we can continue conversations there as well. And you can find, if you're not in there, you can find a link at the bottom of if you go to Your Desk University, the Your Desk website, and you scroll all the way to the bottom, you should be able to find a link to the Slack channel. All right. Well, thanks, Libo, and thank you everyone for tuning in.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.